Welcome back to another episode of the Manly Hoops podcast. We're back with another Big Ten team preview here for you. We have the Nebraska Huskers here. Before we do dive into their outlook for this upcoming season, if you have been enjoying our content throughout the offseason, please go ahead and like and subscribe. We do appreciate everyone's support. But diving in here, first on the offensive side of the ball, Cody, let's start here. What strengths do you see in this offensive attack?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of shooters on the floor at a time. I mean, you have, 5 guys on the roster that shot over 37% last year on, pretty high volume. And Jamarcus Lawrence coming from Rhode Island, he was here previously. He was on that the 2023-24 team that was a really good offense, really lit it up. And, he was a part of that. He wasn't the main contributor, but he was definitely, one of the main shooters on that roster. And then you have Kendall Blue coming from St. Thomas, shot at close to 42% on 4 attempts a game. Price Sanford is a really good catch and shoot option on this team, quick trigger. The one weakness in the starting lineup would be like Buke DeGel, who he's willing to shoot the ball, but he doesn't shoot it at that high of a level. And then, I mean, you have the guy that's probably going to be initiating a lot of the offense in Rienk Mast. He's going to be probably operating as somewhat as like a point center, and they're going to be able to run a lot of off-ball actions around him. He can shoot it himself. He shot at 34% 2 years ago, and he had to redshirt obviously last year with that knee injury. But it's good to get a guy like him back who's been in this system for a while. Just sucks they had to sit out a year, but he's going to be a great piece on this offense. And then you have other guys down the board as well, and Connor Recegian, who's coming back. He's a really good movement shooter. Not like a ton down the board depth wise from an offensive perspective, but this is going to be an offense that's a really tough cover when they could go with their 5-out spacing consistently.
Yeah, I agree. That's the main strength I jotted down. I mean, they have a bunch of shooters coming over. Obviously, you mentioned like Price Sanford coming over from Iowa, 40% shooter himself. Esesian at 37%. Mast shoots it well for a big man, 35%. Kendall Blue, like you mentioned, a guy like Jamarcus Lawrence, 38%, his second stint back at Nebraska. So they have shooters, up and down this roster that should really help the offense. Unfortunately, there are, a few weaknesses in this offense that I jotted down. One being, like you mentioned, the guy that's going to be initiating a lot of the offense is going to be Rienk Mast. I think there's a primary creator issue here on this offense, right? At the guard spot anyway. You're looking at like Sam Hoiberg, right? Who's, 13.3% assist rate. Jamarcus Lawrence, he's 15% assist rate. And you've got guys like Esesian, Price Sanford, who are more, like you mentioned, off-ball guys that like Sanford, I think, has a little bit more off the deck ability, but he's not a guy that's going to be initiating offense off the bounce for you. Which leads me into one of my other weaknesses, which is like, can they take care of the basketball? Both those guys I just mentioned, Lawrence and Hoiberg, both over 22% turnover rates. And like for Lawrence, this was an issue even back when he was with Nebraska the first time. I mean, 26.8% turnover rate as a sophomore at Nebraska, 20.4% as a freshman, 24% for his career. Kind of the same deal for Hoiberg, 23.5% last year. And he's not used to, much usage on the ball. So they're going to have to play through Rienk Mast a lot. I just don't really love the on-ball creation and the ability to take care of the basketball of this offense. And then one other thing that I'd also mentioned, I don't really think this team's going to be all that good on the offensive glass. They're going to take a lot of deep shots. They're going to shoot a lot more threes, I think, but they don't necessarily have like a strong offensive rebounding attack. And in looking at Mast is like a 7% offensive rebound guy. a few other guys up and down the roster, they're kind of in that like 7% as well. So I don't really see that as being, an area of strength for them.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a floor efficiency based offense. It's never really been a team, or like Fred Hoiberg's never really wanted to get on the offensive glass. He's had more skill based bigs, and they kind of emphasize getting back in transition. But yeah, I think turnover rate is going to be an issue. Like, as many like perimeter oriented guys that they have, they really don't have that many good ball handlers. And you mentioned Lawrence, who's really struggled with it throughout his career. Like Sanford doesn't handle it. I think like, Bukejel and Mast like operating like up top as front court pieces, I think can like help. And I think the overall spacing can kind of mask like the lack of sort of on ball creation to an extent. I think the guy that's going to really take over this role is Kendall Blue. I think he's really the best guy when it comes to getting downhill, getting to the rim. He's really the only guy that, has that sort of burst and athleticism to get to the rim, even though it's not fantastic. Like, I don't want him with a 25% or 26% usage rate. Like, I think a lot of it's still going to go through Mast, and, they're going to trust a lot of their off ball actions to create good looks for them and open up some stuff at the rim as well. But I think if they really need a guard to consistently make plays for them, I think their best option is probably Kendall Blue. Like I said, I don't think he's going to be fantastic. And then, I mean, you have another guy coming off the bench in Ignius Yarsavicius that I think I kind of liked him in the tape that I watched. I think he could be a solid post up presence, like a true like pick and roll man as well. And he's a guy that can get on the offensive glass naturally while you can kind of still emphasize getting back in transition. I don't think he plays a massive role because I think the front court is pretty well locked down. But if he can come in, play 15 to 17 minutes, and I think he can provide somewhat of an offensive punch.
Yeah, and the other thing too with him, he's kind of similar, as he has some floor spacing upside as well too, right? I mean, he didn't shoot it, only shot I think 61 threes last year, but 31%. I mean, that's serviceable enough for, a 6'10" guy that can he's also a threat as a roll man, so as your third big, I think it's not a bad spot to live for Yarsavicius. Shifting now to the defensive side of the ball, what strengths do you see on this side?
Yeah, I mean, from a personnel standpoint, it doesn't look fantastic. I'll just be straight to the point. Like the point of attack defense isn't fantastic, but I think they can mask this with the scheme. It's a heavy rim denial, post denial scheme, probably one of the most extreme that I've seen in the entire country. Like they're trying to deny the rim at all costs. I don't have the exact numbers up, but I think they're like the best team in the country when it came to rim attempts allowed. Third percentile on synergy. But I mean, in turn, they'll give up a lot of catch and shoot threes. But I think their ability to deny the paint and deny the rim gives them a decent floor, and then they're kind of just at the mercy of shot variance. And this scheme helps them turn teams over to an extent. Obviously, they don't have like fantastic personnel, like from an athleticism and length standpoint, but the scheme is going to be a very big driver. And the fact that they value getting back in transition, I think is going to be another key. It's a less athletic defense, so I think they kind of need to value it, and teams are going to need to grind it out in the half court against them.
Yeah, I mean the rim denial defense. What was it last year? You were living on the 3-point prop bets against Nebraska.
I do it almost every game. Like,
yeah,
just guys get left
out.
open.
You kind of have to. What was it? Was it Selton Miguel? I think you were all over one time. No, I mean it certainly plays into a safer floor having a rim denial scheme. Obviously, like you mentioned, the personnel isn't fantastic. It's not an overly athletic bunch. So, I think from like a weaknesses perspective, versatility on this side of the ball, versatility, switchability, particularly with the front court. Like Rienk Mast is not a very good defender. He's coming back now off a serious injury, and he already wasn't a good defender on this end of the floor. And then, even though the rim denial scheme does kind of favor limiting rim attempts, their rim protection isn't fantastic if it gets that far. And it starts with like Mast and however you say his name. Uh,
Bukdija.
yeah, I know you've got it down. And Yarcevicius, who are all like sub 3% block rate guys. So, I mean, obviously the scheme tries to limit that, but inevitably it's going to get there, and it's not a strength of this team. Um, so for me, it's just really the versatility of this group, switchability, and the overall rim protection, because obviously it's going to get there. They're not good enough where they're going to cut off all rim attempts. So
No, I mean they like to think that they're going to. They will deny all post up attempts. I will tell you that, unless it's like a middle post up, like they trap it every single possession, and like that's a main driver for them in forcing turnovers. And if there's any league that you're going to post trap every single touch, it's probably the Big Ten. Probably has the best post up players in the entire country. Obviously, it's kind of skewing to be a little bit more guard heavy as most teams most leagues in the nation are, but yeah, their post denial is obviously really, really good. I mean, this defense kind of reminds me of I think it was the 2023 defense, was just a little bit less athletic, but the scheme kind of was able to drive them and get them inside the top 75. Yeah, like I mentioned, they're going to be at the mercy of some 3-point variance at times, and especially with this defense that is going to be asked to be playing in scramble mode a lot of the time. If you're going to like force your own rotations, like you need the length and athleticism to be able to recover to shooters, and they're just kind of lacking in that regard. Like a few guys that I'll point out that are solid, like a Jamarcus Lawrence, he's solid in the scheme. Sam Hoiberg's a really good playmaker defensively. I think he's probably their best perimeter defender. And then I think Kendall Blue is a solid fit for this scheme as well. 6'6", probably going to play the 2 position, and he has length as well. So those are just a few guys that fit. Everyone else probably doesn't fit all that well unless you go down the board and you find like a Jared Garcia. I think Bukdija is fine here, but overall, like the wings are just very lacking, and there's a lot of responsibility on wings to be good in this scheme.
yeah, I would agree. Now looking at team MVP, team X Factor, where did you go here?
Yeah, I went with Rienk Mast as my MVP. I think he's going to have a lot of responsibility on his plate, really just operating as a point forward or a point center a lot of this time, and his pick and pop skills are going to be really important to open up the floor for everyone else when these guards are going to look to drive and get to the rim. I think his spacing is going to be extremely important. And for my X factor, I went with Kendall Blue, kind of for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Like there needs to be a guy that can create off the bounce and generate some catch and shoot threes where you can collapse the defense. And it just doesn't seem like they have that element right now. But if there was one guy, it's going to be the St. Thomas transfer in Kendall Blue.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. I actually went with Rienk Mast as my MVP and X Factor. Went with him as my X Factor because I think a lot of the offense is going to fall on him in terms of creation. He's a really good passer, as we saw in his years at Bradley, and then his year at Nebraska so far. So I think it's going to be really important for him to be that that creator for them, whether that's out of like handoff game or out of the post. And he's going to have to be like get back to what he was 2 years ago and then some, right? Because they don't have the same talent that was there with him then. So I just think a lot's going to depend on him for whether or not they are successful this season. So that's why I went there. But and his health, I think, is another thing. Like hopefully, I think that makes it even more important. Can he be what he was before? Because if not, like this Nebraska team that's already not expected to be that good is going to be in for a tough season. So before we wrap things up, ceiling and floor for this team, and then one bold prediction.
Yeah, I think this is a group that can get to like 10th in the league and put themselves in like bubble conversation, maybe like a 10 seed, because this is a league that has a lot of depth. So being 10th in the league is really no slouch. Their floor is probably, I had it like 15th or 16th. Like I think they're pretty safe from the bottom two, but I do think there are paths for this defense to run into some trouble be at the mercy of some shot variance. And like the year kind of ends how it ended last year when they went on a really bad run and missed the Big Ten tournament. Like I could kind of envision that happening again.
Yeah, I had very similar thoughts. I had them at their ceiling at 10, maybe on the bubble. And then their floor was I had at 15. Just I think there's definitely avenues here, like the primary creators on the offensive end, particularly at the guard spot. The defensive talent and versatility, I think, can be an issue that could cause them to slip to here. They're going to be, as we said, a really, I think, prolific shooting team, but I'm not sure that's going to mask all of their issues. Which leads me into my bold prediction. My bold prediction is that Nebraska leads the Big Ten in turnover rate. I don't really know how bold that is, just based on roster makeup, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was more kind of like the 2023 Nebraska team that was really poor at taking care of the basketball. They were 223rd in the country in turnover rate at 18.6%. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw something closer to that mark.
Yeah, I can envision that, and I honestly could still see them being a pretty good offense, even though they lead the league in turnover rate, just because there's going to be nights where they shoot 50% from three on high volume. There's just that many good catch and shoot options on this team. But I went with a Rienk Mast stat for my bold prediction. I said he's going to average 4.5 assists per game. I just think he's going to be, the trigger man and dribble handoffs or a short roll creator, dishing out to shooters. I think he's going to be doing that consistently this year. So yeah, I went with over 4.5 assists. I don't know if it's going to be tough for a big man in college basketball to get to that number, but if he's going to be used a lot, like we think he is, I think it's attainable.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. He's a really talented player, as we've talked about too. So we'll see kind of what his usage looks like, but it should be fairly high. But anyway, we'll wrap things up here with Fred Hoiberg's Nebraska Cornhuskers, and we'll see you next time on the Mainly Hoops podcast.